If you had asked someone in the 1960s or 70s who was leading the space race in America, they most likely would have said NASA, or maybe then President Kennedy. If you ask the same question today, their answer would most likely be SpaceX. No one would argue SpaceX has changed how we view space travel in the last decade, but not everyone would stipulate that every innovation SpaceX has brought to the world stage has been a good thing. Whether the company is ushering in an era of space utopianism or a variety of messes the human race will have to deal with for generations, with more than 1,000 rocket launches, it seems that SpaceX will be the driving force of space exploration for the foreseeable future. Elon Musk's SpaceX came from a lack of affordable rockets available for the billionaire to realize his dream of a sustained greenhouse on Mars. The project of manufacturing affordable and fully reusable spacecraft was realized in 2001, and the company was up and running by 2002. Ever since then, the company, backed by Musk and his billions, has been making enormous strides toward a space-bound, science fiction-inspired future. SpaceX, as the first truly successful private spaceflight company, is responsible for inspiring what could be considered copycats, most notably Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and the U.S. government's Space Force. The future of space exploration will be decided by SpaceX and those it inspired. The first step to truly taking our society interplanetary has to be reusable spacecraft. While SpaceX wasn't the first to realize this, they were the first to execute it. In December of 2010, the company successfully landed the first stage of their Falcon 9 rocket on land, the rocket using drones and thrusters to pilot itself back down to the landing area to be reused. This was an astronomically important breakthrough, which the company expected to follow up with designing a completely reusable launch system. SpaceX is also the first company to successfully relaunch an orbital rocket. Modern-day SpaceX rockets have not yet accomplished 100% reusability, as recovering the Falcon's second stage is considered by company executives to be too expensive at the moment. However, SpaceX's newest addition, a Starship, rather creatively titled Starship, is said to be completely reusable and is set to take the Falcon family's place in the SpaceX interstellar fleet. An early prototype of Starship, Starhopper, perfected an all-new engine system known as the Raptor, which will run off liquid methane and be able to withstand reuse in an estimated 1,000 flights, bringing SpaceX's Starship and the world closer to permanently sustainable space travel than ever before. SpaceX has indicated that Starship might ship a commercial payload out to the stars as early as this year, though nothing has been confirmed. A modified version of the Starship launch system is being considered by NASA for the Artemis program, a project tasked with returning humans to the moon by 2024. All of this success is even more impressive considering SpaceX is not a government, just an extremely well-funded private company. In fact, SpaceX holds several historic records relating to its status as a private company, such as the first privately funded liquid-fueled rocket, first privately funded rocket to reach the International Space Station, first private spacecraft launching into heliocentric orbit, and a myriad of other records. Moreover, by using a system of tight vertical integration in which the company designs and manufactures almost every piece of tech used, SpaceX is able to keep the cost of space travel lower than ever. When discussing SpaceX, it's important to remember the goal the company was founded on: reaching, researching, and eventually inhabiting Mars. This is a large part of why the Starship's Raptor engine runs on methane. Elon Musk and SpaceX engineers have theorized that eventual Martian astronauts or even Martian colonists would be able to synthesize rocket fuel from carbon dioxide and hydrogen provided by Martian water trapped in ice caps, a theory which was recently confirmed by a study out of the University of California at Irvine. Elon Musk is serious about reaching the red planet, and soon. For one thing, he has a 12-year-old bet with Michael S. Malone, an author and host of several PBS shows, that SpaceX would put humans on Mars between 2020 and 2025, and Musk continually reiterates that time frame. Another far more compelling reason to think SpaceX is on the precipice of launching a Martian expedition is the covert purchase of 2 oil rigs off the south coast of Texas near a SpaceX testing site and manufacturing facility in charge of producing the Starship prototype specifically designed to carry up to 100 people at a time. The 2 oil rigs have been renamed to Phobos and Deimos, the names of Greek mythological figures, and more relevantly, Mars' 2 moons. SpaceX is being very cagey about their new acquisitions, but photos recently surfaced on Twitter that seem to suggest a SpaceX vessel of some sort has arrived on Deimos, the former oil rig, not the moon. These purchases come extremely close to the opening of the Federal Aviation Administration investigation into SpaceX over the possible violation of flight licenses by Musk's most recent Starship tests. The FAA and Musk have a history of tension, Musk seeming to view them as an obstacle and the FAA seeming to think of Musk as impatient and reckless. The move offshore could be interpreted as a move to make launch sites less transparent, which brings us back to the central change SpaceX has made to the future of space travel. Space will be explored not by governments, but by private companies. This brings with it positives and negatives. Due to the private nature of SpaceX, space exploration is not held back by bureaucratic quibbling or political gridlock. It is funded by a billionaire and doesn't have to rely on sparse government funding. However, there is little oversight as to whether SpaceX acts in the public good, and since the spaceflight company fills such a revolutionary, pioneering role in a burgeoning field, there is little real regulation as to what it can and can't do once its spacecraft leave the atmosphere. For example, Starlink, SpaceX's satellite-powered Wi-Fi experiment, while an amazing feat of technical engineering and potentially life-changing for people on the ground who otherwise would be fairly isolated from the world at large, the venture has also drawn criticism for its pollution, high satellite failure rate, and the imposition of more than 1,000 satellites which currently obstruct astronomers' views of the cosmos. Defunct satellites formerly part of Starlink will also prove an obstacle to future space flights, adding to the existing pollution of the Earth's outer atmosphere. Because orbital velocity can reach extremely high speed, something as small as a screw has the potential to decompress a space capsule, spelling disaster for any possible inhabitants. And with 64 malfunctioned and decommissioned satellites still in orbit, SpaceX has pumped a lot of loose screws into orbit. However, because of a lack of relevant laws, there's little that can actually be done about this other than ask SpaceX to stop, and so far, that hasn't made much of an impact. Musk himself has made some extremely concerning comments about the government of an eventual Mars colony, suggesting that SpaceX will set up its own government and decline to recognize international law. If the history of colonialism tells us anything, it's that a private corporation founding a country is a very bad idea. Musk at times has exhibited some troubling tendencies and was removed from the board of Tesla for erratic behavior, which does not bode well for the prospect of entrusting him with setting up a government. He also has a contentious history with Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, possibly another big player on the interplanetary stage. Hostile relationships from company CEO to company CEO is one thing, but escalate. Musk claims the government will most likely take the form of a direct democracy in which colonists would vote directly on laws and other items which, in the United States, Congress votes for. The system has its pros and cons, but we are mainly concerned that without oversight, Musk has nothing pressuring him to keep his word on allowing such a free Martian society. As with all new technologies, SpaceX's innovation has ushered in both exciting new realities and interesting ethical dilemmas that will have to be addressed at some point. Whether the history books will look on SpaceX as the founders of a new way of life or the heralds of some serious lasting issues, only time will tell. But whatever the future holds for us, it seems SpaceX is determined to get us there in some very, very cool rockets.